Did you stumble across a boy drinking from a tree stump in the woods and get kidnapped by his dickhead older brother? Did you take a dip and get randy with this boy who has a deep, dark secret? Did Gandhi wander into your life and fuck your Stockholm Syndrome romance with a 17 going on 104 teen hunk as Gandhi represented the evils of capitalism? Did you have this 104-year-old bozo tell you to take a drink when you turn 17? If so, you may have just stumbled into the Unkind Rewind, where we just got tucked with the 2002 groomer romantasy, Tuck Everlasting.
Thrill me.
I'm gonna name you Kodo. You get a name too, Podo.
I got good news and bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
You too? You got a boner too? Blue Steel.
Salutations, listeners! I'm Josh Dugan, coming to you from Minnesota, where I've been tramping about in the woods looking for weird water sources with Nestle on speed dial. Joining us from New York City is my co-host, Sean McGrath. Sean, have you been helping girls learn to float in an effort to bed them?
I mean, you don't want to do that in the East River, for sure. There are other things floating in the East River. But what I am doing is I'm going onto subways here in New York, and I'm waiting for people to start playing percussion on their knee. And then I'm getting up and doing some 360 spinning.
Okay, cool.
And some suggestive, borderline racy dancing.
Right on. This week, we are joined by our special guest, who had not seen Tuck Everlasting since she was about 10, Karyn Cooper. Karyn, why don't you tell the audience who didn't catch last week's installment a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Karyn Cooper. It's Karyn with a Y, so I like to say that makes it a little bit different.
You're not those Karyns.
No, the name Karyn has always been interesting to have because of pop culture, because first it was Mean Girls, so people would meet me and immediately go, God, Karyn, you're so stupid. And I'm like, thanks, we just met.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. You want to go to Taco Bell?
I'll tell you that I don't share any identity or goodwill towards misspellings of my name.
Oh, yeah.
So I can empathize with you that other Karyn C's and K's and E's and whatnot. It's like a totally different name.
It is.
I don't see an SHAUN or Josh might understand the CHONE.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, you hate Sean Figgins.
People spell it that way?
There is a baseball player.
Sean Figgins did, yes.
At least one guy did. Yeah. But yeah, I just see those as different names. They're not my name.
I just feel like it has to be Sean Bean or Sean Bon. It can't be either or. You know?
My thing was always like, well, it's not an English word. It's a Gaelic word.
It is.
It's like ballet. You don't say ballet with sort of
ballet.
English. Yeah. We don't say that. But as I'm giving this explanation, in second grade, I'm getting pantsed. So.
No, well, my name is Karyn, but I'm not a Karen. I only bring that power out if I have to use it for good. So
Karyn understands the jokes that we make at the beginning of this, but I'm wondering for the people who have joined the podcast who have not seen Talk Everlasting, if they're like, why is he spinning on a subway? Who's floating in the river?
I'm currently playing with a frog that I found in the woods.
Yeah, or a newborn fawn. Like, that thing was small.
There was still afterbirth on it, I'm pretty sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, not that cute when it's dripping wet.
Nah.
But listeners, we do a lot of movie-related in-jokes at the beginning of this. Mostly for our guest delight.
Also probably helps if you've seen the movie if you're listening to this, but
it does help if you've seen Talk Everlasting. I don't know how many of you out there have seen it, but we're going to get into it.
It's probably not a lot, honestly. I don't really remember this movie existed until somebody brought it up to me several weeks ago, and then Josh just happened to ask me to be on the podcast, and it was like, well, I have the perfect movie.
Yeah.
I will go on a limb and say that this episode of this podcast may be longer than the movie. So
It may.
It was a quick watch.
It was great.
You have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. It is called Chick-Lit. That is CHICK-LIT. I host it with my best friend Aubree. We read books that we read growing up, and we see if they still hold up as adults.
Interesting premise.
Some of them really don't.
Can you give us the current flavor of the month that you guys are doing now?
The current season is New Moon, which Sean, I did go back and watch your clips from the movie, so
Thank you.
it was fun. I was like, I gotta make sure that they're not like,
Cha-ching.
Sean just got 8/10,000ths of a cent.
I wish.
Yeah.
I wish it was that much.
I may have watched it on YouTube, so...
Oh. I don't know if
Sean's
those
not
views
getting any
count.
of that. No, you didn't watch it on cable? That's the only way Sean's getting paid.
No, I don't have a giant remote that has entirely too many buttons that I don't know what to do with.
Right.
My parents don't even have that anymore. I'm very proud of them. They have made the switch to streaming
Nice.
very smoothly.
Yeah, listeners, if you didn't know, Sean's in Twilight, and they reused the footage in New Moon. We talked about it last week.
We're going to talk about Twilight on this episode, I guarantee you, and it has nothing to do with me.
No.
Correct.
So I revealed last week my undying shame at not having seen Tuck Everlasting before it was selected for this episode. Sean, did you have a relationship to Tuck Everlasting before this week?
No. I would have been in college, I guess, when it came out.
I think we're both out of... I was
Shortly.
done for sure. I think you were too, but I
Yeah.
can't remember. Yeah.
But around
I was
that time.
9.
Yeah.
Well, we both graduated early, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, but not that
yeah,
early.
I was aware of it. It didn't seem like something that I was going to run out and see. So I knew of the name when it popped up. I think, Josh, when we were talking about it, I was like, well, I don't see it coming up on many guest lists.
Right. Yeah.
We should probably take advantage of this. But no, I couldn't tell you anything about it. Couldn't tell you who was in it. Yeah, I was pretty far off on what I thought this movie was going to be about. I actually thought it was going to be more of a Jane Austen-esque British thing. Kind of a poor man's Jane Austen.
The cover does give that vibe.
Yeah, maybe that's what I was picking up. And the word everlasting, right? Like, that's a gobstopper and that's Tuck. Is that an everlasting gobstopper? Yeah. That's the only two
Yes.
times I've really heard that word in sort of a titular form.
Well, I was raised evangelical, so I heard the word everlasting a lot.
Yeah. You're dealing with a couple of pagans here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my dad's an ordained minister.
Currently not evangelical.
I'm a godless heathen.
Yeah.
I am a godless ordained minister, actually.
You were in the fold, though, huh?
I was, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was. That's their favorite verse, right? It's like, for God so loved the world, something everlasting life.
I mean, everlasting is a big promise.
Yeah.
It's a lot to put out
Not
there.
something that I really want to experience.
You're jumping so far ahead. No, I'm joking. Okay, so we asked what your childhood was like at the time that you would have been watching this. So I'm going to throw to the clip where you're talking about that here.
So this movie came out in 2002, which means I would have been 9.
Yeah.
I want to say, I know that I didn't see it in theaters. I think this was a Friday night movie. My best neighborhood friend and I would have these sleepovers where her mom would go grocery shopping on a Friday afternoon. She would drop us off at the local video store and let us pick out whatever DVDs we wanted. And she would buy our snacks while she was grocery shopping. And so this was one of those DVDs that we picked out. And then I think I remember that she really didn't like it, and I did. Because she just wasn't into the whole historical thing. Like, I think I had to, like, talk her into picking it. And I remember being so into that movie. Like, I think I rented it 3 or 4 more times that same year, which probably would have been like 03 or something like that. So I was probably 10.
Sure.
And I just remember like thinking it was so romantic, and like Alexis Bledel, I think I had a little bit of a crush on her, and like, and all the boys in the thing. So, and then I read the book sometime after that. I know that I saw the movie first, and then I read the book.
Were you able to confirm if your childhood bestie didn't like Tuck Everlasting when you first watched it?
Should we go really long times without responding to each other? So I think I sent her a text, but she is really busy and hasn't texted me back yet, unfortunately. But
I want to jump in there on the crush on Alexis Bledel, because I imagine like this was a really good barometer for a lot of pubescents, because there's a lot of different, you know, you have the bad boy brother, You have like perfect cheekbone Jessie. And then you have animated doll Alexis Bledel. I mean, you have a lot of things to choose from, right? And then if there's something wrong with you, you're like, ooh, William Hurt.
Something deeply, profoundly wrong.
Yeah. But I mean, even Spacek looks pretty great in this.
She does.
But
Yeah.
You said you watched it pretty young. Was this kind of a formative attraction for you where you were like, ooh, Bledel, something's stirring here?
So a lot of people talk about like the mummy being their bisexual awakening or whatever. I don't know if that was necessarily what this movie was for me, but I remember wanting absolutely nothing to do with Jessie. I remember being like ragingly attracted to the older brother, to Miles.
Yeah.
And then also not really knowing if I wanted to be or be on Alexis Bledel. I don't know. I think her early career was a lot of stuff like that where she was just very, except for Gilmore Girls, she has a little more agency in Gilmore Girls, but like a lot of her movies that she put out at that time were very innocent, like wide-eyed kind of character, and I think it was easy for me to be like, I just want to take care of you. I just want you to be okay. I just want you to get out of your Victorian stifling home.
Let me catch some fireflies for you.
Let's go swimming.
I can pound 2 sticks against a pot or whatever the hell he's hitting.
Leave that 100-year-old boy child that you're following around.
When she was apprehensive about jumping in the waterfall lagoon, and then she's like, oh, I can't swim. I was like, but also, like, as soon as you get in there, everything you're wearing is going to be transparent.
Yeah, she's wearing white.
She's wearing white. She's got this, like, slip on. I mean, there's not a lot going on. It's like maybe pantaloons or something. I can't remember quite what it is.
I would be very interested to know, like, wardrobe-wise, what they actually put under that. Like, in real life, not, like, in the movie. To keep that from happening.
There was a full, like, cat suit underneath it, I bet.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I can imagine being out with even Mr. Cheekbones and being like, you know what, maybe I don't want to take this to the next level. I have him see me completely nude, like through a wet turn-of-the-century pajama contest.
It's a wet t-shirt contest for Victorian.
This is cutting edge. This is bleeding edge. This is the first wet t-shirt contest.
Yeah. This is what, 18...
It's actually 1914.
1914,
yeah.
Okay.
The Great War is ramping up and he's going to go fight the fucking Huns.
I do remember later on we see 1899 as her birth year.
Yeah. Because she's supposed to be 15, I think.
I don't know, how close are we to 15 for real Alexis Bledel at this time?
It's a good question.
Here, I can look quick.
She's in her, like, mid-30s now, so it's probably, I think, anyway.
Yeah, if there was ever one of the brothers to roll up on a motorcycle and take his helmet off, it was not Jessie.
It was absolutely not going to be Jessie.
She was born in 81, so she's like 20 here.
Okay.
She looks 12. I mean, she looks...
Yeah, she looks very young.
Yeah, she is kind of flawless face, never a zit, just animated.
She's a porcelain doll.
Yeah, like the something that like Drosselmeyer winds up and plays for the children in the Nutcracker.
I think she does have that quality of like, even though, spoiler, I guess, she doesn't drink the water, like she does have that quality of like, if you were to picture like this very like westernized idea of an eternal child, like eternal youth, like she has that essence about her.
In real life, she's drinking 3-4 gallons a day. I mean, she is hydrated.
Yeah, for sure.
She's probably drinking adrenochrome too, but
I was literally gonna say that.
Do you think people are coming into this, and maybe you're coming into this, like how much are people coming into this with Gilmore Girl?
That's her only real credit, or her only real like large role. This is her first movie.
I was gonna say, was this concurrent with Gilmore Girls?
Yeah, Gilmore Girls started in 2000.
Yeah.
So she's hot off the presses. She's 2 years into doing Gilmore Girls.
They wanted Jared Padalecki to be Jesse.
Oh, that would have been a bad...
The producers loved their chemistry from Gilmore Girls. And Padalecki, in like the most fucking... this is like the harshest IMDb trivia note I think I've ever seen. Is just, he didn't want to do it because he wanted to work with other people.
That's a great thing to say when you turn down a role.
I don't want to work with her.
Oof.
Yeah.
But Karyn, were you coming into this off of Gilmore Girls, or was this something that you guys came into kind of sight unseen?
I think this may have been the first thing I ever saw her in, actually.
Oh, okay.
There's no way your mom would have let you watch Gilmore Girls.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, fast-talking Lorelai Gilmore, hell no. I actually don't think I watched Gilmore Girls at all until like my late 20s, to be honest. I like it. It's cute and fun, but...
But this was basically you, like, seeing the box, like when you and your friend were at the video store, and that was kind of enough? Okay.
Yeah, like, and it was very much that. Like, it was like seeing the cover of like these like basically like beautiful like teenagers frolicking in a field in Victorian clothes. I was like, oh, that looks right up my alley. Stick my nose back in Pride and Prejudice.
As a child, were you often coming to books from the films that have been adapted from them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, most often.
Doing the reverse course, yeah.
Well, the only thing I didn't do that with was Harry Potter, actually.
Okay.
Eventually I was allowed to read Harry Potter.
Because he's Christ-like.
Yes, because actually Harry Potter's Jesus.
Yeah.
If you didn't know.
They're both magicians, right?
Yeah.
So when you were choosing movies with your friend, was the film being in a historical setting, was that like a repeated sticking point for the two of you when you were choosing these Friday night movies?
I don't remember that specifically being a sticking point, because things that were coming out around this time that were popular with kids were like The Matrix, and the early 2000s was this very like futuristic, let's imagine what the future is going to be like type of time, and like a lot of the movies were also in that same vein. So I do think that I was like, I just want to go back to a different time, and I'm not like the other children. I want to watch a historical movie. I'm like a pick-me for boomers.
So you mentioned not being able to watch Shrek because you grew up in a protective
Correct.
evangelical household. Were there any other films that you desperately wanted to watch as a kid that your parents stonewalled you on that you had to wait for that stick out?
A lot of Tim Burton, because I desperately wanted to be goth as a child, like from the time that I was like 8 or 9 and I like saw a girl in like corpse paint walking down the street. I was like, I want to be that. And of course, my mom is like, that's satanic. But so like you do when you're in middle school, you think that Tim Burton is like the pinnacle of filmmaking. So there was a lot of Tim Burton movies that I wanted to watch so desperately, but I wasn't allowed to. So once I figured out when I was in high school how to torrent things from the internet, that was a lot. My first ever R-rated movie was Sleepy Hollow, and I accidentally watched that at my sister's house.
That was
she didn't
R?
realize. It was rated R, I guess just because of like the
Violence.
Stylized gore.
Yeah.
Jeez. I did not remember that.
It's not
There's
like,
not a lot of Burton that's hard R, is there?
Yeah.
Or it's a
No, there's
light
really
R.
not.
This is soft R. This is lowercase r.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that. Okay, so this is also funny, too, because normally our guests are like, yeah, this was like a taped off TV, or my brother had it and gave it to me. And you're just like, yeah, I torrented it. Which, congratulations on being the first guest to say that.
Well, allegedly.
Right. But yeah, like, I think this is like one of the more recent movies that we've looked at, this being post 9/11 release.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the situation of like a movie that how it came to you can evolve with it still kind of feeling maybe daring at the time. Like, I would probably have been more worried about the FBI kicking in the door. And
Oh, our ISP was like throttled. Like they were throttling our internet. And my mom would be like, why isn't the internet working? I'm like, it's definitely not because I'm downloading the last 3 Tool albums.
Or like a 60 gig version of something that couldn't be compressed of Tucker
Right,
Carlson.
right.
My ears perked when you said that you rented this probably 3 or 4 times because that's where your actors are going to get some residuals.
That's true.
Back
That's
in the
very
video
true.
store days.
Too bad they're all dead. Video stores, not all actors.
Not the cast of this movie.
See, the video store should have drank the water. Like, we would still...
I think William Hurt.
Bill Hurt's dead, I think.
I think William Hurt. Angus.
Yeah, Bill Hurt is dead. I remember this because
Yeah.
Rip.
he was on Goliath. I worked on that. Okay, so you said this was the first rated PG movie your mom allowed you to watch. Did rewatching this crystallize whether or not your friend's cool mom had bothered to get approval from your mom or not?
I'm pretty sure that she did not. I don't think she went through the steps for that.
Karyn, what's the scene that your mom would have had the biggest problem with from this movie?
Probably any of the boy-girl romantic stuff. Like,
Oh, okay.
any of the the wet t-shirt contest and the swimming and then probably the dancing.
That's the hottest part of the movie.
And then did they...
I'm joking.
Right. And definitely the kiss. She didn't like me to watch, like, anybody kissing.
Jesus.
Would she have had any problems with the leering and suggestive, like, sotto voce of Ben Kingsley at that gate?
Oh,
what
definitely.
a fucking creep.
What was that?
I forgot how terrifying that was. Like, last week when I was watching it, I was just like, I absolutely forgot how gross the man in the yellow suit is.
Let's just break this down. Yeah, and this is like a way creepier guy in the yellow suit than the fucking Curious George books.
I went there too.
This is a 4'6" Ben Kingsley, pretty close to Sexy Beast, right, Josh?
Hot off of Sexy Beast. It's
Hot
like within
off
2
Sexy
years.
Beast, where he's terrifying. Approaching a 15-year-old girl at dusk or post-dusk as she's catching fireflies. I mean, talk about naive. Don't go up to that gate, Winnie. But she does. And he talks to her about how easy it must be for her to attract suitors. So, as a young Karyn, the red flags were not raised.
Well, you mean for me or my mom?
For you, yeah.
I definitely think that, because they set him up to be so gross. Like, you're definitely supposed to know he's, like, the bad guy. Like, there's absolutely no ambiguity there whatsoever.
You're supposed to be happy when he dies.
Yeah. And I think that's really all that I picked up on was like, ooh, this guy's bad. But then rewatching it as an adult, you're like, whoa, that's so creepy. And I'm scared for her.
Yeah.
I wonder what the fuck he's even doing in this movie.
Yeah,
we should maybe just take a moment and talk about this character, because he definitely felt like he should have had more of a spiritual or supernatural gifts, power to track. He didn't do any of that.
I assumed he was the devil or something.
Yeah, I thought he was going to have the same powers as them in some regard, or like the keeper or the guardian of this secret, but he was just a bounty hunter working for himself to get land and get the access to the stream.
He wanted the source to the water to make a bunch of money.
right.
But how's he know all this, and how, like...
Because his mom worked at the hospital where, was it the mother of Miles's wife who left him?
Yeah. So
Yeah, let's rehash
it was
this.
either the wife or the mom. In the book, I think it's like a different story, and there's more backstory to it, where he talks about like growing up, knowing about this family that didn't age, and he has looked for them like his entire life. Like, it's been like his life's work to find them. In the movie, it's very much just like, oh yeah, some broad at the hospital said her husband wasn't getting older, and so I was like, cool, I'm gonna go capitalize on that.
But, like, for him to know that there is capital gains to be attained from this, it can't just be, like, they're demons or something, but, like, oh no, I know that there's some profit to be gained from tracking these people to a stream of immortality. Like, I didn't get the jump there. Maybe there was, I blinked
It was
or something.
too broad of a jump, I think, in the movie.
Okay.
I would like to reread the book and just see if it, like, actually holds up as far as, like, those specific plot elements. Because it's a short book, too. Like, the movie is short and the book is very short. And I think it's, like, 200 pages, maybe even less.
I looked into the book a little bit, and Winnie in the book is 12 when the novel starts.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he tells her to drink the water when she's 17. So she can marry him.
It's a real George R.R. Martin type of...
That's some grooming ass bullshit there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess we take a second just to acknowledge that he's 104.
This is Shades of Angel and Buffy here.
Right. And she's 15?
And Edward and Bella.
20-year-old playing a 15-year-old. And he's, 17 when he drinks this?
17 and 104, yeah.
17, 104. So, like, why wait until 17, I guess?
So they can be the same age, I guess? I don't know.
Forever.
But they'll never be the same age because he has
Because he was born in
80 years.
1600.
We'll always have 80 years
Yeah.
of experience more than her. So
I think the other thing that I feel like in this movie that they don't do well is portray that he's 104, really, because like there's not really a lot of moments in the movie where you feel his age.
Yeah.
And you should, because like that's kind of the whole point of like why she doesn't drink the water is because she doesn't want to be cursed with eternal life.
Right. But it's just fucking old man Tuck told her.
Yeah.
you would just be talking about, I mean, you could talk about presidencies, he could talk about Lincoln, he could talk about the Civil War, he could talk about, I don't know. I mean, anything to kind of signify that this is a 100-year-old guy who has had a vast life experience, but like emotionally he's still 17.
Which doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
Yeah. But you don't think you and your peers ever get caught up on that, though, right? Like,
absolutely not.
No, you're like, look at that hair.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and this is probably me editorializing it a little bit, but I definitely feel like there may have been a conversation at the sleepover where my friend was like, wow, Jessie's like so hot, because she always was like, went for the more like feminine, like high cheekbone guys. Yeah. And then like me, I was like, no, I like the bad older boy.
You can definitely see the beard coming in on the bad boy. Yeah. The hair's shorter.
And he's so angry, and he's like, been to war and stuff.
And he can lean on rocks and not announce his presence.
Don't you wish he would have told you before he kissed you?
Isn't he a dick?
I'm not sure why they wouldn't just kill the man in the yellow suit.
Right. Well, they essentially
because they do. They leave it to their mom to do. Which caught me off guard when they're like, yeah, he's dead. I'm like, holy shit, she brained him?
In the book, she actually shoots him. She shoots him in the head.
They needed a PG rating.
Yeah.
But like every other single movie that Disney's out there, you get hit with a branch. You get knocked out.
You're just waking up.
You wake up with a headache.
No concussion.
No, she caved his skull in.
Tell that to Greg Abbott, Sean.
And it's so...
Wow.
It is so creepy when he pulls Winnie down on top of him and he dies with her on top. I remember that scene specifically. There were so many parts of this movie where I was like, whoa, like new memory unlocked.
Do you think your mom's permissiveness on this film was related to the damage already having been done?
I think so. I feel like at that point, she was like, oh, you watched this. Maybe she even sat down and like watched it with me.
Did she pre-screen stuff for you?
So there was this website, and it's still up today, and it's called pluggedinonline.com, and it is run by Focus on the Family, and it is a media website in which the film review is essentially screening it for any non-Christian bad content and listing in detail that content in the review. So for parents, they're like, okay, I'm going to go and read and see, if there's anything in this movie that my kid can't watch. But for me, I was allowed to go to that website. I would just get on there and I would read all of the sexual content and all the movies that I wasn't allowed to watch. Because it was just like feverishly documented by these like Focus on the Family writers.
I bet they didn't have a problem with the grooming though.
Oh, definitely not. No.
Nope. Totally fine.
With IMDb, I don't know when they started
it's been a long
this
time.
process, but they do the parents' guide, which kind of, I guess, chronicles what they think could be potentially a problem.
But it's user input.
It's user input, yeah. And I think that there are vigilantes who go on here, who are probably from the website that you're talking about, who say that this is a mild violence and gore. This is a no profanity, mild alcohol, drugs, and smoking, which I can't really remember.
It's the poker scene.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is gambling. I guess that could also, that's not listed here.
They're fine with that.
Heads up, parents. There's some gambling.
Yeah. But I think that, like, a lot of times if it was a movie that I had either already seen or a movie that I, like, really wanted to watch, and she would kind of pre-screen it on pluggedinonline.com and then watch it with me. So most likely that's what happened, because I was allowed to rent it, like, a bunch of times after that. And I realized, I was like, I think another thing that I found about this movie that I really liked was because I was, like, so sheltered. It's not like I was a Victorian child, right? Like, it's, you know, obviously, like, I have, like, rights now.
You were made to wear a corset?
I was not made to wear a corset.
Okay.
I made one, actually. I sewed one. I entered it in the fair, and it won a prize.
Nice.
Was this in the best corsets category, or?
Yes, it
Okay.
was. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I think I, like, identified with Winnie, like, a little bit, because, you know, she just wants to get out from behind her sheltered little life, her little fence. I also didn't have living grandparents. Like, my parents were, like, a lot older when they had me. It was, like, very much like, oh, whoops, that happened. And so her scenes with her grandmother and, like, the scenes with, like, the mom and the grandmother interacting before her grandmother dies were, like, really interesting to me, because I only had one living grandmother and she died when I was really little. So I don't know, there's just, like, those maternal, grandmaternal figures as well. I just found, like, oh, I would love that. You know.
Do you think there's any part of your mom that blames this movie for you going astray from the flock?
Probably not this movie.
Okay.
Probably my theater career more than anything.
Right.
And that liberal women's college they sent me to.
Oh. Okay, so we asked you what you remembered the plot of Tuck Everlasting being.
This mysterious family, like, moves to town, I think, and Alexis Bledel is like, I'm just a little Victorian lady, well, teenager, and then she, like, meets this family, and they, like, are, I guess, used to be from here, and then they have a very, I'm pretty sure, they have a very almost Twilight-esque conversation in the woods, because she asks him how old he is, and he accidentally is like 104 or something.
Whoops.
And then he's like, just kidding, I'm 17. And she's like, how long have you been 17? No, I'm just kidding.
That's a great joke, by the way. If you add 80 to 60 years to your age when people ask.
Yeah, just, it's hilarious.
I'm looking forward to a really funny movie.
And then there's some kind of conflict because she finds out that this family has drank from this spring in the woods near her house that has made them live forever. And they're trying to keep her from telling everybody about it. So they kind of low-key kidnap her, but not really. And then I feel like somebody else finds out about it and they're trying to, like, let the secret out so that people can drink from it. And probably so that they can turn it into a capitalist venture.
Or a weapon.
Yeah.
Or a weapon. Yes.
It's one of the two, but capitalism's always to blame.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
But that's roughly what I remember.
Those are broad strokes. We like it.
Yeah. I know you probably just used Victorian as a label derived from her costumes more than anything, but were you surprised that this took place as late as it did with World War I ramping up in the background?
I honestly was. Like, I felt like I specifically remembered it being, like, late 1800s, but maybe I'm just thinking of, like, seeing her gravestone.
But the book's also 1880.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's probably a little bit of both, yeah.
That makes sense.
But they also, like, in the town square, you see horse and buggy and automobiles, because it's at that time when, like...
the transition.
Yeah, like, when my grandma was born in 1909, she remembers the first car coming down the road.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Was she in this, Josh?
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
She grew up in Tree Gap. So, were you pleased you recalled the Twilight-esque conversation in the woods about how old he was?
Yeah, I was, and I can't believe I said 104.
Yeah.
Is it also 104 in Twilight? Like, did I just get that from you think I would know.
I mean, Stephanie
'cause I
Meyers
just read
probably
it.
stole everything anyway,
Honestly.
right?
Yeah, she had a dream. Okay.
Oh, yeah, a dream that she read fucking Tuck Everlasting.
Okay.
And then made it about vampires. And made the kid not be 12.
Yeah.
It's not 100 and... Oh, God, it is. He's 104.
Jesus.
Edward is?
Yeah.
She
Edward
stole
Cullen is 104
She
years
stole
old.
it, man.
At the start of the Twilight Saga.
That is the Tuck Everlasting estate should sue her for plagiarism.
I think Natalie Babbitt might still be alive.
Yeah, probably. Most likely.
So you sort of got the dynamic right, but were you surprised that when he was essentially kidnapped by the Tux immediately?
Yeah, I don't think I remembered it being that fast, but the kidnapping part is something that I remembered. Like, I think part of what, like, made me, like, be like, oh, this is such a cool story. I don't know. Like, when you're a kid, like, people are always telling you you're gonna get kidnapped, so I think, like, maybe it's like a, like trauma release or something, like, watch stories about it, or, like, yeah. I used to, like, write stories about getting kidnapped, and my mom would, like, find them, and she was, I was a weird child. One time she was like, what is this? And I was like, it's just a story that I wrote and don't read it. And she's like, what? Why would you write this? And I was like, just don't read it.
Because I want to get kidnapped.
Yeah, it was like, settle down, calm down. You're going to be fine. Like when Sissy Spacek is trying to like console her. And then it was like, listen to this music box.
The melody from the music box immediately was like, I could sing it like, I think I like knew it before it even played. It was crazy.
Which is what the man in the yellow suit is whistling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that was going to come up as soon as he started whistling in his first scene.
And he does that annoying thing where he like whistles through his teeth, which like always makes me feel like it's cheating. Like, I don't know why. It's just...
I also don't think it's him whistling.
Probably not. He's just like...
I think they got Andrew Bird or something to whistle for him.
There is also some genuinely horrific ADR moments in this movie. Like, yeah. I specifically, like, there was a part where they're all sitting in, like, the drawing room or something, and I think it's when they get Winnie back after she's been kidnapped, and, like, she's talking to the parents about it. Like, it cuts to her, and I'm like, who said that? Because Alexis Bledel definitely didn't just say that.
Sure, yeah.
Spare a moment for the quasi-Scottish accent attempt.
What?
Oh my god.
William Hurt. He's doing a thing, and you know, like, unfortunately I've seen this happen a lot, where an actor can't do the accent, so what they do is they retreat into it by kind of going soft and quiet, so they feel like, well, maybe they won't be able to detect what it was. When I first heard it, I wrote down Irish ? Yeah. And then later...
The Scottish ?
Scottish. Uh-huh. A few more question marks.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, this is not something that he should have listed on his special skills, because William Hurt, you can't do, or you couldn't do, a Scottish accent.
No.
Bill Hurt can only play Bill Hurt. That's it.
Right.
We've bitched about him before on the podcast, so I don't want to, like, I don't need to, like...
There were some moments where it felt a little brogy, but then, like...
Yeah.
Because, like, Sissy Spacek is also kind of trying to do it, but not well. She comes across more Irish.
Yeah, she's not as egregious and...
But, I mean, with a Scottish accent, right, you roll in your R's.
Yeah.
It's like the hallmark of a Scottish accent. And it's never... It never comes up. Now, granted, your accent may...
Yeah, over the course of 114 years, probably, since they were last in the homeland.
Which, I think at that point, it would have been less distracting to just have them be American, or to have them have American accents.
Shit.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're Scottish and you've been living in... Where are they? New England or...
It's not... They don't say.
Stars Hollow. I'm sorry, Tree Gap.
At one point... They mentioned this girls' school being in Pittsfield, and I was like, okay, well, that's Massachusetts,
right? Yeah.
But also, it was like a long distance away from where she was.
I think there are multiple Pittsfields, though.
Yeah, it felt a little mid-Atlantic or Carolinas, perhaps. I wasn't quite sure. There's not a discernible Southern accent.
There's a lot of pines, yeah.
Yeah. There's not a discernible Southern accent with anybody else in the movie. You have Victor Garber, who is like...
I was going to bring up Victor Garber.
Yeah, we love Victor Garber over here.
I do.
Yeah. He's
great in Alias.
Yeah, he's Broadway royalty, and he has a knack for playing the father of kind of impetuous and rebellious young women.
I wrote a note to myself, like, yeah, of course I was crushing on the boys when I watched it as a kid, but, like, now, you know, like, Victor Garber as an adult, I'm like, okay.
Vic can get it.
Uh-huh.
You know, he was in Godspell back in Toronto in, like, 1970 with Eugene Levy and fucking Martin Short.
No.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He's one of those...
There's someone else in it, too. It was this crazy production where you're like, what the fuck?
I don't think I knew he had theater chops like that.
Oh, yeah. He goes way back.
Yeah, I think even when he plays the creepy professor in Legally Blonde, I'm just like, okay. You did ask me if there was anything about this movie that my mom would have felt like caused me to stray. I will say the moment when the man in the yellow hat is talking to, I can't remember who he's talking to, and he says, if it's God's will, then let me die. And he says, and what if it is my will? I remember that specifically sticking in my head as like a little Christian child being like, oh, he's not supposed to say that.
Yeah, and he did have a really great line in that interaction where he said, you speak blasphemy, and he says fluently.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. Well, I got a good line. But I was like, why is he challenging this pastor or this priest? Very threatening interaction, just looking at gravestones.
Well, again, if he's just some guy who overheard somebody at a hospital, it doesn't quite give it the same weight. But I think if you're like, to think that he's spent his entire life believing that the Fountain of Youth exists, he probably isn't going to be super, like, even though religion was, like, the prevailing thing at the time, like, he's probably, if you believe that exists, the man in the sky, probably not your first priority, right?
It's also going to lock Ben Kingsley in at 70 or whatever he is in this.
At whatever
mid
slimy age he's at.
Yeah, I mean, he's outlived William Hurt, so more props to him.
Speaking to this, would you guys choose immortality?
No.
I mean,
I think I would be tempted.
I would be tempted. But I also, I kind of am a little fatalistic with where this world and planet is going.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's that. But does the fatalism outweigh the vanity?
I think being immortal, with how much I believe in climate scientists, doesn't quite match up well with living an extra 500, 600 years. One of the more, comical parts, unintentionally comical, was when the boys enlisted her help to go and get mom and dad out of jail, because Sissy Spacek will not die being hung. And the visual that created for me of Sissy Spacek, seemingly, just minding her business as she's being hung.
Ho-hum.
Yeah, oh well. And let me tell you this. If you and your brother cannot be killed, you actually don't need the help of Alexis Bledel to go get your parents out of a 1914 jail cell.
No.
One of you can do the one thing and one of you can do the other.
Just eat their bullets, Tony Montana style.
I also
you cannot
think
be killed.
It's a little funny that they go through all of that to make sure that Sissy Spacek is not hung in the town square, but it's fine for them to just be pumped full of lead and then get right back up, and those guys aren't going to go tell everybody.
No one's going to believe that one
I guess
guard. Yeah.
I do want to circle back to the question though. I think I have such a definitive answer on it because I spent half of my life believing that I was immortal and believing that I would live forever, whether it was in heaven or hell.
Yeah, sure.
And the concept of eternity is having been just steeped in it from such an early age is terrifying. Even though people would reassure me oh yeah, you're gonna be in heaven, you're gonna be having a great time. And I'm I don't want to be awake forever. They're oh yeah, you're not gonna want to sleep, you're not gonna want to do anything but praise the Lord. And I'm that sounds awful. That sounds awful.
Yeah, fuck that noise. I'd choose immortality, though.
It's that or eternal conscious torment. And those are the two things that, at 5 years old, I was, told were going to happen to me. Either one or the other. And so I think, the idea of living forever, while it is tempting, I don't think I would choose it, because at some point, I'm going to be tired. I want to get off this ride.
And you can't do it.
Right. Even in Twilight, there's a way for him to die.
Yeah, these two Tuck brothers probably could have killed themselves a lot of vampires. I was thinking when we get to the end and he sees the gravestone, it's well, I guess I'll roll into Forex and try to pick up Bella Swan.
He got himself a Volvo and went to town.
Or just, lay down and salt burn that grave.
Oh. That was one of those scenes where I was no, I'm watching this by myself. And he's not going to do it. He's not going to. It's not.
Yeah.
No.
The bathwater's worse.
And if you don't know what salt burn a grave means, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if the bathwater was worse or the.
No, the bathwater's so gross. He's like tongue in the bottom of that bathtub. It is. Ugh.
I don't know. I think
I'd rather fuck the ground. I'd rather fuck the ground than.
Taking a bite of the red apple.
and slurp the drain.
Do you feel good about having pegged capitalism as the big bad?
Yes, and that's such a me thing to do. I don't know. I think even as a kid, even though my parents were very conservative and like big business was supposed to be, really good.
That's God's will. God's will.
Still waiting on that trickle down.
Yep.
I'm here. Let it.
It'll happen in the afterlife, right?
Right. I think being an artist in a family full of people who were not necessarily artists or like did not ever develop that part of their brain really gave me a different perspective on things like that. And I think I tended to always side more with the proletariat. And they raised me to be empathetic. I'm supposed to, you're a Christian, you're supposed to care about people unless, of course, they want help from the government. Yeah. How dare they use their tax dollars to benefit themselves, those poor people. Anyway.
Preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Were you surprised Kingsley was the man in yellow? I
honestly don't know if I was like, when I watched it, I had to look everybody up afterwards because I'm so bad with actor names. Aubrey's always the one that's like, that's this person. Mm-hmm. And so I think I had to like look up and remember what else I had seen him in, and now I'm drawing a blank. Because I was like, I know that I know him from something else, but like also this movie was such a big part of that era of my childhood. I'm like, I don't know if he's just stuck in my brain from that or not.
Yeah. How did the story of a 15-year-old girl getting low-key Stockholm syndromed into falling in love with a 104-year-old man play to adult Karyn?
It's creepy. It's definitely creepy. As somebody who unfortunately has been low-key, like, not in the exact situation, but like, I was always,
Imagine if it was the exact situation.
That would be, 10-year-old me would be way on board. There's definitely been a lot of, like, creepy old dudes that are like, you're so mature for your age, and I'm just like,
vomit right now. Jesus Christ.
It for sure rings some alarm bells there. Absolutely.
So we can't use that line?
Yeah. For groomers everywhere, they're gonna know.
All right. Got it. Okay, keep
Sean's
going.
making notes for the listeners at home.
Yeah.
YouTubers can tell what's going on, but
yeah.
All right, so were you playing coy and not wanting to spoil the movie when telling us that you thought we'd find out whether or not Alexis Bledel drank the water?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I absolutely. I remembered.
I figured you remembered. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't have that scene, right? It leads all the way up to that present day.
Her hand might be immortal.
Yeah, we don't quite know how this works. You have to ingest it. But like, are the animals around drinking and becoming immortal? What's the source of the stream? Is this stuff that the book may have told us?
Yes. In the book, I think she like did she pour it on the frog or something? Like, I'm pretty sure there's a frog, and she pours the water on the frog. Yeah. And then at the end, he sees like a toad hopping in front of him, and it's like you're supposed to infer that it's the same frog.
Okay, yeah, that's in the movie. He sees that. Yeah, I forgot what that was. So.
It's not like super clear in the movie.
I mean, if I was paying closer attention, I would have gotten it.
Yeah, I know. I was.
When you were recalling how they found the source of their immortality, you were entirely correct. Was it surprising to you that you remembered how they basically didn't dive into the lore and the texts were just like, well, I guess we're immortal now?
Yeah, yes. No, because as a kid, it's so easy to just be like, yeah, that's, duh. Like,
yeah, well, it's they have to find out about it by being this really unlucky family, right?
And all of them dying.
Yeah, this is a really, like,
But it was the 1800s. It was the early 1800s. Like, the life expectancy was like fucking 36 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
but I guess the horse, it does transfer to horses, right? Because
oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The strange bushmen or whatever pop up and shoot his horse, which, like, in a field like that, you're not going to mistake that horse for anything other than a horse.
Yeah.
Like, that part of the story was so fucking batshit. It was like, oh, they mistook his horse for a deer. I'm like, it's in a field grazing. This isn't like moving through the underbrush and you're like, oh, what's that?
It's not in like thick woods or anything.
They
Like, there's
pop
no
up
excuse.
and fucking murder a horse and then realize that they can't kill it. But Jesse falls to his death and doesn't break his neck, right? Angus doesn't die from being cotton-mouthed or rattlesnaked.
Yeah.
I can't. And then they just assume that Sissy and
You just got really high and really thirsty.
Yeah. I wonder if you still experience the symptoms, like you get the swelling jowls, and like
But you're just...
you just can't die, but your tongue looks like a ham, and it's permanent.
I have to say, the scene of Jesse falling from the tree when it cuts to him twice, like
Why
while
do you
Miles
cut to
is
him
telling,
twice?
But like I paused it because his face is so terrifying and like weird in the scene. It took me like a full like 2 minutes of trying to get it paused on the right spot. But like he's just like he looks like he's like faking dead or something.
It looks like. It's hard to describe if you haven't seen Tuck Everlasting, but the camera is basically like ground POV as Jesse is like flailing. He reminded me of like Anthony Michael Hall being trapped under the glass coffee table in 16 Candles.
Oh my god.
Farmer Ted, yeah.
Yeah, just this weird. And then you're right, Karen, for then to cut to it twice is just bad editing. It's
bad editing. It's a cheap scare.
I think it's inspired.
Just
they're like, this is so ridiculous, we gotta show it twice.
I feel like because the audience is like primarily children, I felt like it was kind of like a jump scare that they could get away with in a PG movie for kids.
Yeah. Because
his face is so like ah!
Okay, so how did the death of the man in yellow and the need for a jailbreak strike you now?
Like, if they can't die, conceivably, she could just hang there. Eventually, everyone would leave.
She could outlive everyone.
She could just fake that she died.
She could just hang for 100 years.
And then, like, they just go get her later. I mean...
And why are you eating? Like, I don't know. Like, why is it family dinner with the cornbread? And especially at that time, like, yes, there's some satisfaction to, like, maybe the taste of that food, but the amount of work that you have to go through in order to cook in a cottage in 1914.
But, like, presumably they still get hungry because it takes them, like, 25 years to even notice that they haven't aged, right? The only reason they realize it is because they're like, none of us have aged in however long. And, like, all these things keep happening.
We keep doing shit that should kill us.
Right, like, presumably they still feel hungry, because otherwise they would notice, like, I feel nothing.
Right.
And, like, would they waste away? Obviously they wouldn't die, but, like, would they, if they stopped eating, would they get, like, scary skinny?
I have a much bigger issue with this.
Yeah.
Man in Yellow has a fucking gun on the girl whose, like, family founded Tree Gap.
Yeah. The Rockefellers.
So, she hits him with the butt of the rifle. He dies. But he's holding this girl fucking hostage. The fucking family owns the town, basically. What fucking reality would this woman who saved the fucking girl, she is being held at fucking gunpoint. What reality is this woman being put to death? It's preposterous.
I guess the only thing that I will say in defense of that plotline, and I don't think that they necessarily were going there, is that it was the Victorian era and women were just essentially decorations unless you were poor, in which case you deserve to die. Or unmarried.
Yeah. She can't vote yet.
She's not poor. Yeah. And Victor Garber's gonna raise hell if the guy that like
No, I mean Sissy Spacek.
Right.
Yeah, but Garber it feels like with the daughter saying this one thing, saying that like I don't know why she's just not like, this motherfucker had me at gunpoint.
Right,
Like,
right.
He's basically kidnapping me, but with way more force and putting my life at risk.
And it's not like they can just check the CCTV footage back then. Like, they would just take whatever she said, you know?
Yeah, because she's rich.
Because
She
she's
had
rich.
a gun to my head.
Yes.
They saved me. You know, obviously there was no love lost, like, with this character in any other scene with the townsfolk. Like,
Yeah.
they all were like, this guy's fucking Creepsville.
Right.
So he mysteriously shows up dead, and the rich, believable daughter is like, yeah, he had a gun to my head. He was saying stuff about suitors.
He was trying to marry me or something. I
No
don't
harm,
know.
no foul. Yeah, he wanted to show me his firefly or something. I'm not sure what that meant.
Ugh.
His lightning bugs.
Ugh. Not the lightning bugs. Yeah, I mean, it's contrived, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
a little bit manufactured conflict.
Uh-huh. So, as the grown-up version of Karyn who wanted to make films, how did you feel about the craft that went into making this one?
I think it's definitely not like the worst movie I've ever seen, like just visually. I didn't find a ton of artistry with like the photography, but it didn't look horrendous.
Didn't look CGI'd.
Right, it didn't look like the 1981 version.
Oh, God. Seriously, I mean, don't watch it, anybody, but, like, watch, like, 2 minutes of it just to see how bad it is.
Ooh, it's on YouTube,
Yeah.
apparently. I think, like, the little motif of her, like, playing with the, is it a turtle or a frog? It's a frog in the movie, too, right?
Yeah, it's a frog.
Yeah. I think, like, that's kind of nice continuity, and, like, her just kind of, like, well, I think that playing with the deer is definitely supposed to be, like, look at these young, innocent people, but then, like, one of them is not young or innocent.
Sure. But it's supposed to be Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But like Eve and Adam's great-great-grandfather.
Who just looks like he's not his great-great.
It
Yeah.
just looks like...
Like this guy, like
It's cool, right?
this guy voted for like Andrew Buchanan. You know, like
He
or
voted
James
for
Bu-
George
James-
Washington.
James Buchanan. Yeah, he probably served under George
Yeah.
Washington. It's funny how, through the prism of 2024, we're all just screaming at our televisions now.
Yeah. I mean, I think the choice to set it... There's two just slightly different times in Victorian history, because I think 1880s was still technically Victorian. I think setting it in the Victorian era, it was, like, for the movie, visually was a good choice, because it was, like, a very stifling time for, like, women, even rich women, like, really didn't have any rights or property, or, like, obviously, like, poor women and...
Or fun.
Yeah, or fun. And they...
Her mom, right?
Don't
Yeah.
you dare play baseball.
Rich as shit. We should talk about the baseball, though, for a second, because, Josh, she hits a fucking inside the park home run on her first at bat.
She's a prodigy.
Like, Josh and I would see that and go, like,
Nope.
that's her, no, or that's her, that should be the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
she's a natural.
Actually, the story of a Victorian girl who, like, goes undercover and
becomes
gets
Robert
into the-
Redford.
Yeah.
like hops out of a Model T, grabs a bat, which presumably she's never held before in her life, and cracks an inside the park dinger against local smart-ass youths.
Local ruffians.
Wiseacres.
Any good parent would see that coming out of, like, the general store or, like, the fucking bakery. No, we can't do Petit Four here, Amy Irving. And be like, all right, we're getting you in the fucking...
This is how you disguise yourself as a boy so you can play baseball.
Baseball is a thing. It's like a
Yeah.
big pastime at this point in
Yeah.
history. Like, yeah.
It's
and
still
I'm
in the weird. It's still in the weird. Like, baseball was for like such fucking rough dudes. Really, like John McGraw is kind of the last like flag bearer for that. But like baseball's
But
Yeah.
you have Shoeless Joe
pretty rough at
Jackson
this time.
playing baseball in the next couple of years here, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's a... Yeah,
Babe Ruth.
anyway,
Babe Ruth is a rookie in 14 or 15.
Yeah. Anyway, a missed opportunity with this entire movie, not for it to be about her natural baseball acumen. Yeah. I'm sure Karen saw
This should
that
have been a
was like-
baseball movie.
Yeah. I'm sure Karen and I are thinking the exact same thing when we see that scene.
Okay, so throwing to next clip, I asked what memory stuck out to you most about Tuck Everlasting, and you said...
I definitely remember that first night because my friend, who was my best friend in the neighborhood, who was really just my best friend because I was homeschooled, she had a brother who always also got to have a friend over. So it was like the only reason I ever went to a co-ed sleepover was because like my mom would just, well, it's fair, you know, he has to have a friend over too, like whatever. And so I just remember like there was some boy there that I had a crush on and he didn't want to watch the movie. But then I was like, do I want to spend time with the boy more and watch a dumb movie that I'm going to find boring? Or do I want to watch this movie that I've always wanted to watch because I've been walking past it in Blockbuster or Hometown Video or whatever for like however many months. And then I picked the movie over the boy, which I think was the right choice. So we went to the downstairs TV room and they got the upstairs TV room so they could watch like Yu-Gi-Oh or something. And
if it was Yu-Gi-Oh, I think you made the right choice.
Yeah, I definitely made the right choice.
Yeah. So you went on to say that this boy asked about you recently. Did you reach out between tapings?
I did not, no. I did briefly look at his Facebook because we were apparently still Facebook friends. I don't really know at what point that happened because I didn't have Facebook then. Like nobody really did. And then at some point in high school, he found me on Facebook and we are friends. He's very happily married with like 2 kids.
Okay. So there's no makeup date?
No, he seems like a great dad. He seems like he really loves his wife and his kids.
Okay, so we can throw to the last clip here. We close by asking what your expectations were for your return to Tuck Everlasting.
My expectations are that it's probably not going to hold up, and I'm just going to set that expectation for myself. Maybe not in like it's a horrible, horrible movie type of way, but just maybe it's not going to be the childhood movie of my dreams. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, it's such a great movie for a kid because it's like eternal youth, you know, what, I don't know. But like, what is that? What does that come with? Mm-hmm. But my expectation, I'm going to set my expectations low and then hopefully I'll be like pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
Or it could just be awful.
Is there anything you're specifically concerned about?
Alexis Bledel is like, she's great in Gilmore Girls. I don't think she's like the greatest like serious movie actress. I think she did a pretty good job in Handmaid's Tale. That's like the most serious thing I've ever seen her in. But like at this age, she was still just really like developing her acting skills. So I think I might cringe a little hard. And then I don't remember who the other kids are played by. I don't think really anybody famous. The only other most famous person, I'm 99.9% sure that Sissy Spacek is in this.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep.
You're right.
So then, did the prospect of eternal youth entice you?
I think it did because, like, I was so terrified of whatever awaited me after death because I think there was, like, a part of me, even at that age, that was like, this is kind of bullshit, right? Like, but, like, if I don't believe it, then what am I spending my time doing? So, like, the prospect of, like, hanging out on Earth for, like, another couple hundred years and, you know, not having to deal with that was pretty, like, enticing, I would say.
Delaying the inevitable judgment?
Yes.
Does it still entice you?
I think there's a part of me that wants to stick around a little longer than I think I probably will. But I don't think that I would trade that for eternity. Like, the idea of eternity is still terrifying to me. And, like, what happens when the world blows up? And, like, you know, eventually the cosmos, like, reclaims Earth. Like, am I just out there floating forever?
Yeah, with Sissy.
With Sissy, you know?
You guys, you're just...
But, I mean, if you're hanging out with Sissy, it's probably pretty awesome, right?
Floating in the dark recesses.
We're just, like, recreating the pig blood scene in Carrie, like, on Mars somewhere.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, hanging out on Mars with no need for an oxygen suit or anything, like...
We'll just wave at Elon when he drives by.
I mean, you are affected. You
are
are affected by physics, right? Like, bullets still knock you down.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, we didn't really get, I guess, the guidelines here on what can affect you, not necessarily kill you, but what can affect you.
Yeah.
Obviously, gravity applies if Jesse can fall on a weird loop forever.
The loop was so weird.
That's the take you used?
Because he's clearly on wires.
I'm doing some Jesse impressions over here. Yeah, it did not look like Hans Gruber falling off of the Nakatomi Towers, which looks great. This looked really hokey. And did not give a lot of credibility to a fatal fall.
Yeah.
I will say that I think at some point I mentioned that I thought that there was going to be fiddle music, and I watched this with subtitles, and in one of the opening credits, it literally, I took a picture, it says fiddle music playing.
Nice. You did say fiddle music, I can verify
Real
that.
briefly, there is one of the more bootleg ripoffs of Last of the Mohicans used. I believe it's kind of near the end of the jailbreak scene. Like, Last of the Mohicans is an amazing score. I believe that's a James Newton Howard score, but could be wrong on that. But there, you should listen. Go back to that.
I thought it was
scene.
Michael Kamen, but I might be wrong.
It might be, but boy, talk about this movie getting ripped off. They have ripped off Last of the Mohicans pretty hard musically in this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
You are not going to believe who did it. Trevor Jones and Randy Edelman. But
Trevor Jones.
Trevor Jones did the fucking Labyrinth score that you fucking hated.
Rightly so. Rightly so. Jesus Christ. Well, he got his act together by 92 or whatever that was that Mohicans came out. Let me ask you, Karyn, do you think people who know this movie or love this movie can recall how many steps it is to the top of the Eiffel Tower?
Oh my god. 202,080 steps to the top.
1,652.
Okay. See, I watched it last week and I couldn't remember.
I was wondering if that was one of those, like, little things that become precious to people who love Talk Everlasting.
It is so cringy when she says it. And I will say, I did cringe a little. She was 20, so I'll have to, she wasn't like a literal child, but she was a young, she was early in her acting career, so I can't fault her too much. But there's a couple lines that she says in the movie where I'm just like, ugh, you hated that. I can tell.
Did her performance measure up for you?
I think it was about what I expected. It was a young actress in her first feature-length film. And, that's fine, I think. I think she did a fine job. There were a couple lines. I wasn't, cringing the entire time. I think it's the part where she jumps into the water, and then she comes up and she's, I think supposed to be, sputtering and choking because she can't swim, and then she, calls his name, but she's just kind of Jesse. It just falls so flat. But again, I think it's just being young and having only done, things like Gilmore Girls as your most famous, Rory Gilmore as your most famous role is probably, it's hard to kind of break into that more serious stuff.
I wonder how she figured out how to not talk fast.
Right. Just everything doesn't sound like it's dripping in cocaine.
Yeah.
Because you have a set amount of minutes that you got to get through that script on the CW.
And those are 100-page scripts, probably.
It was the WB back then. I'm pretty
WB.
sure.
Okay.
I only remember that because it was the blocks that I watched were if I could sneak in One Tree Hill, and then there was a Gilmore Girls block, and then a Seventh Heaven block.
Another Alexis Bledel frog connection. Then
that's true.
Can't avoid these.
Maybe that's why
and there's water. There's a water tower.
And was this kid from a CW or I keep calling him Jesse.
He goes on to be on General Hospital and then Nashville.
Okay, yeah, he has a soap opera look. Yeah. He certainly doesn't have the look of a guy riding around a motorcycle.
No, he was lucky. Years. He was lucky for a long time on GH.
I was like, a stiff breeze is going to blow over that kid.
Yeah,
he's maybe $130.
You could slide down those cheekbones.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I
don't think I'm going to.
I didn't even mean it to be
No, I mean, if I was speaking to the man, he would constantly
It's fine if you did.
But he would constantly being obligated to tell me, "Hey, Sean, I'm up here. Okay, quit looking at these.
Just my eyes are
quit looking at these cheekbones here."
So do you feel like this held up despite your assumption, born mostly from self-preservation, that it wouldn't hold up?
I think it did. I think it did. I definitely wasn't absolutely disappointed in it. I think there's obviously some plot holes that happen anytime you play with time travel or eternity or no aging. And so, but I think, like, maybe the nostalgic part of me was willing to suspend my disbelief for that, just because it brought back so many memories of being in the downstairs TV room with our snacks, and I definitely don't think it's, like, winning any awards, for sure, but I was not disappointed.
Correct. You're correct.
Yeah, no, for definitely
It didn't win anything. Maybe it got like an MTV award for Best Kiss or something nomination.
Ugh.
I could see
That one?
I don't know. I mean, maybe just like
1 win, 3 nominations. It won the Heartland International Film Festival Truly Moving Sound Award.
Yeah, I was nominated
for a truly moving picture. That went to Jay Russell, the director.
That sounds fake.
The Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, the Saturn Awards, nominated both Bladel and Spacek, and the Critics' Choice Award. Critics' Choice nominated this for Best Family Film.
So if it's a Saturn nomination, they're calling this science fiction, right?
Or fantasy. Yeah.
Or
Which
fantasy.
I think, yeah.
It's romantasy, yeah. Teen romantasy.
Josh, tell me again the award that this won.
The Heartland International Film Festival Truly Moving Sound Award.
That sounds like if you asked like GPT chat to come up with
Absolutely.
an award.
Yeah.
The Truly Moving Heart Award of the Heartland Award.
Uh-huh.
So what you're saying is the Midwest was like really into this movie. Somebody was, some film festival.
Let's see where it is. Indianapolis, yes.
Uh-huh.
I was gonna guess Indiana. This is a fucking Indiana movie if I've ever seen one.
That award, by the way, was presented by a butter queen.
Absolutely, yeah. So, moving on to picking up the scraps. Is there anything we've missed that anyone wants to talk about?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about the fucking narration.
Oh.
I don't get it. Why do we need it?
Why is it Elizabeth Shue?
Why is it Elizabeth Shue? What was the last... When was...
I was sitting there like, this doesn't sound like Alexis Bledel.
Yeah, this is like... I don't know what she's doing other than in 2002, 2001. I mean, she's off...
That was Elizabeth Shue.
Yeah,
Hollow Man. Okay, that was the latest thing. But yeah, holy smokes. I couldn't place it. I thought for a second it was Winona Ryder.
I couldn't place it. I didn't notice until I saw it in the credit.
So the end credits roll up when she gets the last credit under cast.
I didn't make it that far in the end credits.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I'm wondering though if that's I'm a completionist. I go all the way. I go all the way just to make sure there's not like Thor picking up the hammer at the very end.
That's what she said.
But yeah, I think like that's a weird component to this that doesn't quite work. And it feels to me like a studio add-on where they're like, this isn't making sense. Let's bring in Adventures in Babysitting to fucking add some clarity to this kind of jumble of a story here.
I don't really like when people do voice VO narration in movies. It's generally not my fave. It didn't bother me as much in this as it probably would have if it wasn't like a movie that I loved growing up.
Yeah.
But
it's completely unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. It's almost always unnecessary.
I mean, tell Scorsese that too.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it goes as far as a gripe for me, but it's certainly something that I was curious as to is this her telling the story maybe later to her grandkids, and we can see that she's old or something, right?
That would have been a cool way to tie it in.
Oh, we're constantly making positive adjustments to movies.
Yes, so do I. I do that on my own podcast all the time.
I'll say that Glenn Howerton and Charlie Day met during auditions for this film.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
No.
Uh-huh. So Sonny, I assume they were both auditioning for Miles, but...
I guess, the age would have been the older one, probably.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Wild.
Can you imagine Glenn?
This movie is responsible for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
This movie needs to be talked about a lot more now.
Yeah.
I've completely misjudged this movie. Holy smokes.
I would like to bring up And I think this only bothered me now. It definitely didn't bother me as a kid because I had no concept of things like this, but it really bothered me that when she, like, gets, like, quasi-undressed after the swimming scene and when they're, like, warming up by the fire, that she doesn't have, like, giant bushes under her arms of, like, armpit hair. Because I'm like, women didn't shave back then. Like, she should have had absolute cave woman everything. Like...
Where did she learn those moves, by the way?
I think she...
Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, she was watching some Fleetwood Mac.
Who's also immortal.
I'll tell you this, like, we are hearing the music in that scene, but the character's not.
Oh, absolutely not.
The character's only hearing cheekbones.
Playing the spoons.
Yeah. Like, doing his bad impression of, like, one of those plastic drum players outside of a sports arena.
All of a sudden it's Stomp.
And that's enough for her to just be, like, taken with the beat and drift into this, like, primal...
I rolled my eyes so hard at that.
I'm lucky your retinas are still attached.
I think it is supposed to be, like, her, like, tapping into, like you said, something primal, something, like, more, like, she's allowed to be a kid, allowed to, like, she's things.
Allowed to be free.
Yeah,
she's allowed to pop the corset a little bit.
Yeah, she could not do that in her stifling Victorian home. But yes, it's absolutely cringy. The corset talk is always forever. In historical movies, it always bothers me when the characters who are used to wearing the dress that they wear every day, like, make comments about how annoying corsets are. I'm like, women didn't, I mean, they probably were annoyed by it, but it just was what they wore. Like, nobody was like, try wearing a corset, like Elizabeth Swann, okay? You know, like, Sissy Spacek also, it's not like she was born in the future where we don't wear corsets anymore, and I don't think she's old enough to remember a time before bodices. So, like, the comments of, like, oh, why do women wear these? I'm always like, that's just 2002 writers making those comments. Like, it's annoying.
Okay, let's move to major gripes. Each one a piece so we can get out at a reasonable time. Starting with our guest, what was your biggest gripe with a film this time around?
Oh... I think just, like, the plot holes, again, I was willing to suspend my disbelief, but it definitely hit me in the face. Like, this is a kid's movie. This is a movie for kids. And, like, I'm trying to judge it as such, but also it's like, what do you mean? Like, you can't just, like, why aren't you rich? Like, why didn't you, like, invest money or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, they're
still very poor.
They're still very poor, which is fine, but...
You'd think that you could amass wealth at a certain point.
In, like, hundreds of years.
Yeah, you'd have to hit, like, the mother lode or something at a certain point.
I also still really hate also how... I'm sorry, you said one apiece, so...
That's fine, go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
How, like, sourpuss they make the wife that, like, leaves him when she realizes he's not aging. Like, they just make her out to be this, like, you know, in the Desperate Housewives intro, when they roll up the can of sardines, like that woman's face, it looks like her. Like, they just make her so, just, you're not supposed to like her. She couldn't love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, the grooming thing is probably my biggest gripe.
Yeah.
Wait, why?
Well, apparently I can't use most of my pickup lines now. But... Ben Kingsley being super weird at that gate and throughout the movie. Like, there's not enough backstory on him. There's not enough backstory on the origin of this thing. Like, Josh and I just rolled off of doing a whole movie about, like, the Fountain of Youth in Cocoon. And so, at least with Cocoon, we're getting so much more world building and story behind the source of everlasting youth.
I mean, they definitely still shorthand a lot of stuff, but it's at least explained somewhat.
This is so rushed, and, like, without having the payoff kind of at the end, I was a little disappointed that we weren't getting to... I mean, it's a big swing to do a movie like this, right? Like, why not just go with it?
That's just built around grooming.
Yeah.
I like, as a minor gripe, I just hated that stupid flashback where it was like, what is this, home video footage? Like, it looked like they were shooting on an 8mm.
Yeah, it was on a Super 8.
Which hasn't been invented. I mean, like, what the fuck was that? Like, just give us a flashback. Don't give it this herky-jerky, like, oh, we found this tree, and then we just started drinking like the root water, because that's
As
what you
one
do.
does.
As one
The
does.
costumes aren't even that different either. Like, they weren't significantly different enough for me to believe that this was like hundreds of years ago. And it just, I don't know. As a costume designer, it bothered me.
Like, they still would have enough wherewithal back then to boil their water. Like, you're not just putting your face in and drinking bacterial water. I mean, water out of a freshwater stream. Like, that's gonna fucking kill you even before you have immortality. Like, they
Can you boil
kinda...
the immortality out of the water?
That's a good question. Yeah, we need to get to the bottom of that.
If you inhale the steam, is that the immortality?
Your nose becomes immortal.
I think my biggest gripe is Bill Hurt's accent.
Yeah. Not a lot of love lost here for Bill Hurt.
No, we're not. This is not a Bill Hurt fan podcast.
Nor will it ever be.
No, it will not be. Moving on to the next little segment. Fix this movie for today. One fix, a piece. How would we fix this for a modern audience, starting with Karyn again, if you've got anything?
I think that I would have made Winnie's hand immortal, and then at the end, he, like, digs up her hand and then just absolutely goes to town. Just, like...
He's gonna get it finally. You know?
Yeah. Like, there has to be some kind of, like, reuniting, and why not, Just like a quick old-fashioned in the graveyard.
That's a
It's
good
been
love story.
100 years of Blue Ballin'.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. He's never moved on.
No.
But also couldn't be bothered to come back to Tree Gap, Stars Hollow, wherever.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of still do this movie today, even with the weird age gap thing, because we've seen the success of Twilight. I just don't think teenage girls give a fuck about this as much as, like, we do.
No, we don't.
They just don't see it as an issue because they're cute and because they're...
She's only 15 here.
Wise or whatever.
Up, man.
Yeah, but, like... I think that it still would be made today very much like this.
I think you go PG-13 and actually gear it towards teens.
Yeah.
She could absolutely be more of age. Like,
I think the love doesn't track because they're so young that, like, it doesn't make any sense that he would be into her because their relationship is so chaste, relatively.
Yeah, just make her a woman living in kind of suffragette times who doesn't have a lot of opportunities, but she's like 30 and unwed, and like all the people in the town are talking about it. And she meets this guy, and he's perfect, except that he's immortal. I don't know, like, it doesn't have to be a heavily parented 15-year-old.
Yeah.
You could still have all the trappings of meeting somebody who just happens to be immortal. I mean, they're doing that now with the Interview with the Vampire series, right? Yeah, you could still do that. You could just take it out of jailbait.
I think you could set it in 2024, and then the entire thing is actually just a long series of TikTok dances.
Oh, yeah, good point.
It could just be released on TikTok.
Yeah, and then Twitter will
Scroll
go
for part
crazy
two. Yeah.
over the grooming stuff, and they'll cancel it, which is
for
fine,
sure.
because nobody wants to watch that.
This movie will be killed in the comments.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, so Saving Graces, what was your favorite moment or element of the film?
I actually really like the scene at the end when the grandma dies. I know it's, like, kind of morbid, but, like, it's Winnie's first, like, taste of death, and seeing her mother be so normal about the death and the passing of her like, just, it's like, it's time.
Yeah.
And her getting into bed with her like she's a little girl, I think is just really sweet. And that scene always kind of touched me as a kid and now. Because that's, that's what I think ultimately you're supposed to think that, like, she saw that and it was like, okay, this is what's supposed to happen to me. I'm not supposed to stay 17 forever.
Josh, did you have a saving grace?
I kind of want to save mine if you've got yours.
Yeah, I'll say I think the cinematography is actually pretty good in this. It makes the area look pretty magical. I mean, the firefly scene, I think, was well done. Yeah, I don't know where they really shot this again. I didn't look
Maryland.
into
It was Maryland, Baltimore, Berlin, and Bel Air.
Okay, it makes that state look great. It should be part of the Chamber of Commerce tourism presentation, like film in Maryland, because this is what you can get. Mm-hmm. And I will give a little credit, because I think that transition from old Tree Gap to new Tree Gap is actually pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
With the horses kind of fading,
mm-hmm.
and the cars, like the 2001
You got
Subaru
that fucking
Outbacks.
You got that Grand Wagoneer there.
And then he comes rolling down
As
the
a
street.
former Grand Wagoneer driver, I miss mine. I had envy of that car owner.
Yeah, I do think that transition is actually like one of the better camera tricks in the movie.
Yeah. Mine is 16 seasons of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Say no more.
Yeah.
I just would like to imagine Glenn Howerton in this movie,
Like reading the scene at the fireside, right? Like he has to read those lines in an audition room. Like, why don't you just tell her? You know, like, don't you want to know the truth? You know, but like, as Howerton would have done it.
Yeah, like fucking out of 10.
Yeah.
Like the veins like bulging in his like he's full like psychotic Dennis.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. So, Karyn, overall, how did you feel about your return to Tuck Everlasting after all this time?
I felt good about it. I watched it immediately after we recorded my interview, and I felt like this was a good one. This was a good one to return to. I definitely, I'll reiterate, like, obviously there's some plot issues and things that you pick up on as an adult that you don't notice as a kid. And obviously, like, the grooming thing is definitely not cool, but, like, again, we didn't notice. So I think it was like a nice memory. It brought up a lot of fun little tidbits of my childhood that weren't scary hellfire and brimstone.
Right. So before we say goodbye to the listeners at home, where can they find you, Karyn?
You can find me on Chick-Lit with my co-host Aubree, and you can find us on social media on Instagram and Twitter at ChickLitPod.
Everybody should listen.
Thanks, Karyn.
Thanks, Karyn.
You've created an everlasting tuck in our life.
Yeah. I've been talking this whole time.
I'm so glad I could show up to get tucked with.
I saved it. You only gave me 2. I saved it.
You murdered the use of. I mean, that was absolutely textbook how you dropped that tuck reference in there.
Well, Karyn, thank you.
That was your ace card, and you played it on the last hand, Josh.
Pulled it right out of the sleeve.
Karyn, thank you for subjecting your childhood to the scrutiny of the Unkind Rewind.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
You've just listened to another installment of the Unkind Rewind podcast, mining and potentially ruining your childhood for content, one film at a time. Unkind Rewind is a Munchcast production and can be ingested wherever you listen to podcasts and on the Unkind Rewind YouTube channel. Music for this and every other episode of Unkind Rewind was composed by Divorcio Suave. Rate, review, like, and subscribe to Unkind Rewind on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Good Pods. Links to all our social media accounts are in our show notes, but you'll find us as at Unkind Rewind Pod on nearly every social media platform, all of which are available at our website, unkindrewind.com. If you have a question, concern, complaint, or feedback, you can email the podcast at unkindrewindpod@gmail.com or call into our call-in line, area code 507-479-6440, and leave a message that can be played on air. Fans should join the Munchcast Discord to discuss this or any other episode of the Unkind Rewind with like-minded people. This dialogue may just make it into a future episode of the pod. The Unkind Rewind Patreon will be coming soon, so start squirreling that pocket change away. Thank you for listening to another Unkind Rewind.